Good morning, everybody. We're going to start right on time. Thanks for coming. And these are a series of little rapid-fire information from our innovation partners. And I had the privilege of doing one of these yesterday, and it's a really, and plus I've done some last year, and it's a really good thing. We'll have lots of time for some questions, lots of time being 5 minutes after each little talk for quick rapid-fire questions, and then the speakers usually stay around, and at the back, when the next guy is on, we can always talk and back and forth and everything. Hopefully it'll all work out. I'm Bob Sivak. I'm from the Ontario Centres of Excellence, so from the host organization, and I'm pleased to host this session and also the event. Hope you're having a great show. Yeah, I was almost late getting here because I saw 6 things I wanted to stop in to see before I started, so that's how exciting it's been even for me. Anyway, I guess I should get back to the script. Because I have this nice script that everybody's kept me to keep me on time. We'll keep this session going. Our first speaker is from FedDev. It's Taras Hallier. And Taras, I have your little bio stuff here, and I'll read some of it, but I know you, so I could make up something if you prefer. Anyway, I better get to it because I'm getting off. Taras is from FedDev Ontario. Taras joined FedDev in April 2010, and I think Taras might have been the first guy I met from FedDev when it first started up. So that's pretty cool to see you here. And he's now the Director of Program Policy and Innovation. In this role, he was responsible for program and innovation policy at FedDev, so we got a great guy to tell us about the latest thing. Taras has been around more than just FedDev. He's a 14-year career in research, post-secondary education, innovation, commercialization. He has experience gained with post-secondary institutions and a whole bunch of other stuff, and I can tell you that I've been on several committees with him, and he's a great guy and a great discussion and a good intellect on these matters and really concerned about innovation, moving stuff forward. I made that part of the bio up, so hopefully that works for you. So without further ado, please let's welcome Taras for his presentation. Thank you.
So hi. It's always good to be in these theaters. I just remember the first time I presented last year, and I just had this unending feeling that I was in some sort of a hockey rink, so that kind of thing, which is good in the playoffs. Go Vancouver. So I'm just going to give you a sort of a high-level overview of what we've been doing so far, what some of the funding announcements or the funding opportunities that some of you might be able to or might be interested in. But I'll start a little bit with a few quick snapshots of who we are and where we've come from, and then afterwards we'll take questions. And again, right immediately after the presentation, I certainly will be happy to just tap my shoulder, and we can go outside and talk about a few things if you have even more questions. And then I've got a sort of like Bob, got to run around, is kind of busy. So our Southern Ontario Advantage initiatives. So who we are. We were formed in 2009. We're about just coming up to our 2nd year anniversary in August. We were given $1 billion 5-year mandate to support the distinct needs of Southern Ontario. We've delivered at the beginning. Our primary mission was to respond directly to the economic downturn that was quite frankly quite directly hitting Southern Ontario. But also we had economic development programs and structure. We are supporting on economic and community development, innovation and economic diversification through contributions by communities, to communities, businesses, and non-profit organizations or not-for-profit organizations. So that's really our general meaning. Through economic researches and roundtables, so our first mission really was to directly respond to an economic downturn, to sort of reinvest in people during the most difficult times that could be best placed to launch a recovery once the worst was over. I think that's the easiest way to say it. To flow through the infrastructure, to give people jobs, approve something Wednesday so that something on Monday, a job is ready on Monday or on Saturday. That was about jobs, it was about a direct response. After the worst of that came over, we then needed to refocus, and we did through economic research, roundtables with a number of key industry and economic stakeholders in Southern Ontario, and challenges were identified for us to help focus on, and that was to address skills and labor issues that that continue to be a question in Southern Ontario, if not in Canada. More leveraging business investment in R&D and productivity enhancements, building stronger linkages between academia and business. Southern Ontario has an enormous strength, as many of you from post-secondary institutions can testify, that we have an enormous strength in our post-secondary institutions. The links are there and could be better addressed and strengthened between business and academia. Improving access to capital and venture capital was big on a lot of people's lists, and diversifying export markets, increasing participation in global value chains. Southern Ontario plays on the world stage. The world stage comes to Southern Ontario for certain things. And of course, helping through all of this regions to diversify their economies. So that's what we were. So year 2 and beyond, our task is to respond to those identified challenges. We take advantage of what the region has for strengths, the industrial base. It's not just manufacturing, it's a lot of really good, high quality, advanced manufacturing, established auto sectors, clusters of strength in very many different areas, highly educated workforce, and access to key markets. And from there, we and our minister then announced last year what he wanted to create was that Southern Ontario advantage, using the key, the ace up the sleeve of Southern Ontario to create that advantage for Southern Ontario in the economy and its communities. So we defined 4 advantages: people, knowledge, entrepreneurial, and prosperity. So you see, things have happened since last year, because I only had one program to talk about. It was a very small one. So we wanted to equip Southern Ontario to meet future labor market needs, to get better business leaders and more entrepreneurial individuals in Ontario, Southern Ontario. In knowledge advantages, where I am directly impacting or directly implicated, we wanted to increase the region's capacity as well as develop and commercialize market-driven technologies in business and through industry-led partnerships. So you'll see our colleagues in other places in various provincial governments and federal governments, they would take it from the PSI, sort of the academic, trying to get, as they say, the ideas out into the market. Here we're trying to organize the ideas within the market through innovation, or having them and helping them better understand how to uptake those ideas. Entrepreneurial advantages: take innovative startup companies, help them leverage angel and venture capital investments, accelerating their projects to market. Prosperity advantages, again, trying what type of prosperity can we do, what kind of strengths can we leverage, really. So take businesses, not-for-profits, post-secondary institutions, undertake them collaboratively, some projects that allows productivity enhancements, regional diversification to continue, and increased competitiveness for Southern Ontario. I think that's really where we want to play there. And so there are initiatives there, really, and that's the 50,000. I'll go down to about 45,000 later. People advantage, we have 3 initiatives. Knowledge advantage, there are 2. Entrepreneurial is 1, and prosperity advantage is also 1, sort of a larger global. And you can get all these different information off of our website, which I'll provide some contact information for you very shortly. So the people advantage. So under people, we wanted to help equip Southern Ontario to meet these future labor needs, develop a next generation of leaders and market innovators. So the first one, really, again, is one of the sort of from primary school right up to just after your university life. So first of all, we've got Youth STEM, and Youth STEM is really, again, aimed at kindergarten to 12, to encourage them to enter science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields by supporting outreach in the area. So there are a number of good not-for-profits that are there to help younger students basically form in their minds what kind of career path, because there's a lot of research that says a lot of the decisions, or at least the conditioning towards that ultimate decision, happens in K-12. We also note that kids who graduate from high school into university, there's a lot more diversion away from the STEM fields as well than we had expected. So this is helping to address that. And eligible applicants, really not-for-profit organizations already conducting outreach in this area. We want to leverage those strengths in this initiative, and you can get up to $2 million per applicant in non-repayable contributions. Contributions, actually, is what I wanted to just quickly clarify. we're not a granting agency, we do contributions, and there's a little bit of a nuance there. The big difference is that in a contribution, you're approved for support up to a certain amount, just like in a grant, but you spend the money first and then you get reimbursed for it. So we say, okay, you got 10 million, you got 2 million, and then you spend against that 2 million, you give us the receipt, and then there's a reimbursement that happens later. So it's a slightly different payment modality for a number of reasons, but graduate enterprise internship would be our second there. This is, again, to provide STEM graduates, students and graduates with real-world business experience. You take a STEM graduate or a STEM student, they go into a company, the company obviously benefits from their skills, but the student then acquires real-life business skills in a structured manner through the company. So you get someone who can be capable of working into an innovative company, understand innovative companies' commercial needs, and try and work towards solving that. So again, that's what we're really looking at. Not-for-profit organizations already doing out, not-for-profit organizations are eligible, as are post-secondary institutions for scholarships. So post-secondary institutions are there to get scholarships, and we'll talk about that. We would help them develop their commercialization scholarships within their institutions. So that's a graduate enterprise internship. We then go into scientists and engineers in business. The first one was you're working in a company. This one is you are the company, or you'd like to be the company in a way. So this support development of business and management skills of these promising entrepreneurs in STEM. Again, assist them as they basically sort of ramp up and launch their business and seed their business. There's some money for you there. Eligible applicants there, not-for-profit corporations and what are known as community futures development corporations across all of Canada. In fact, in Southern Ontario, there are 37 of these, where these are the rural sort of community futures development corporations who are there to support business development and business support and in rural areas, really. And so they're obviously, if you're working in a rural area, either you're a not-for-profit or a CFDC, this is something that is should be, I hope, particularly interesting for you because it allows you to do this in your own regions. Eligible applicants, again, not-for-profits, and then PSIs, post-secondary institutions for commercialization fellowships. This one you get up to $5 million per applicant in non-repayable contributions. I won't get too much into the detail of how you match what you get, so on and so forth, but you can get up to $5 million in non-repayables. So you don't have to pay it back, basically. So that's the big thing. We then get into entrepreneurial advantages, and this is our investing in business and innovation initiative. This initiative, why STEM, youth STEM in the people is particularly popular. I think, again, just to give you a sort of how we're doing so far, graduate enterprise internship has certainly necessitated a good amount of interest amongst the potential applicants. And another one that I found, again, was particularly investing in business and innovation is particularly popular. What this does, it helps companies, or it helps VC or angel investors. If you're a company who's working with a VC or an angel investor, the short story is if we approve the project, we're in for basically a third of the project costs, up to $1 million. So we can give you up to $1 million so long as the VC or the angel gives you up to $2 million, right? So there's that sliding scale. So it maxes out at a $3 million deal. Another way of putting it is we'll give half of what your VC or angel is giving, right? Up to $1 million. So that's the, it helps, again, startups bring new products and practices to market through this thing. It helps angels also leverage and make more deals, really. So if you're a company, that's your deal there, the $1 million deal, and that is actually a repayable loan, right? If you're an angel investor network or an association, there are other stuff that are non-repayable, other contributions that we can support you in projects for instance, for investment attraction of your increased or enhanced investment attraction activities, outreach, so on and so forth, to make your network a bit more attractive. Associations could and probably should get together into larger projects to see how they can address the needs of the overall community in Southern Ontario, get the angel investment and a little bit more higher up in to the next level, really, I guess I should say it that way. So up to $50K you can get for angel networks, or $2 million for angel networks to support investment attraction development. This is a very kind of thing very interesting kind of thing that we had identified to us, so we thought we would respond to. Knowledge adventures. This is my homeroom. ARC. That's what I was talking to you about last year. It's a 15 million 2-year pilot project. We're about it's 2011. It's wrapping up early 2012. It's gone pretty well. We probably are going to help at the end of the day up to about somewhere in the area of order of about 300 small and medium enterprises across Southern Ontario for this. It's really something that we're quite happy with. I'm quite happy with. It was launched April 19th. It closed on June 14th. It's a pilot. And 23 projects, that's 23 post-secondary institutions, colleges and universities specifically, across Southern Ontario that were recently, were announced and make up sort of our ARC family, I like to call them. So it's gone very well. Technology Development Program is the one that we have that's currently open, up to 75 million allocated to this initiative. And it's launched September 14th. This is to accelerate game-changing products, encourage a collaboration between private sector, post-secondary institutions, not-for-profits. These are things that are pre-market or just up to market, 1 to 7, 1 to 5 kind of thing, or years before market. So you're not going to launch necessarily right away, but it's something that you're going to try and launch. It's something that you're going to invest in as a business. So this is something important. Again, game-changing. Things that are game-changing can be subjective, but really that give your company the advantage, give Southern Ontario an advantage, allow a sort of value chain sort of to be created. So those big sort of high-impact projects. We give you up to $20 million, the applicant anyways, once they're approved, in non-repayable contributions. So it's a not-for-profit or a post-secondary institution that can get up to $20 million. And your industrial partner or partners are responsible for supporting the project up to another 20 million, basically. So it's a 50-50 match on that one. Again, this is getting a fair amount of interest. If you're thinking of applying, I'd strongly advise you to talk to us first, make your decision, get your application in, because I personally think this thing is very well subscribed right now. Pretty well subscribed and a lot of interest. Prosperity advantages, and this is the last one. It's a $210 million allocation that we have, up to $210 million anyways. Launched November 26th, and this supports strategic economic development projects. And how does that? What do I mean by that? Well, I mean things like productivity enhancements across sectors and industries, right? I mean regional diversification again, where you have a project that's innovative or that is important enough to be able to get a diversified economy, particularly in a hard-hit region, and also building a competitive advantage, taking pieces, the existing pieces, putting them together, making them bigger, so that the players in those large clusters, I guess we'll call them, but taking those, enhancing and creating new relationships that basically make Southern Ontario and its partners in that activity competitive on the world market stage. They can enter the world market. The world comes to Southern Ontario is really the motto I have for that one in building a competitive advantage. So people say clusters, but these are business clusters really, driven by innovation that would include post-secondary institutions, that would include not-for-profit, sector sort of visions, right? Sectors coming in, regions coming in, those sort of big visionary kind of economic development projects. There are other stuff that we do as well. I don't know how much time I really have for it, but I'll just drill down a little bit again into what we mean when we get into prosperity advantages. So those are the 3 types of projects that you could, again, go for. So accelerating the adoption of new technologies, processes, and skills to enhance businesses, right? Get higher output in relation to their investments. 2 minutes? Perfect. I only have 2 slides. So, left. Canada lags behind a lot of nations, most specifically the U.S. in productivity. We need to catch up. We need to even get ahead, never mind catch up. Don't worry about catching up, getting ahead. And so there's opportunities for sectors to come in and make an impact positive in the productivity of the sector. Regional diversification, I've already said. Opportunities in Southern Ontario communities or regions that have long-term impacts on their economic diversity. building a competitive advantage, again, building on those assets and strengths of Southern Ontario businesses and regions to create or expand economic clusters and enhance competitiveness, right? Eligible applicants vary by area of focus, but depending what you really want, if you're a company that wants to actually lead one of these projects, then it's repayable. You do have to pay it back. If you're a not-for-profit, then there's non-repayable options as well for you. You get approved, you expense it, you bill us, we reimburse you, but it's not repayable. So in general, if you're a business, you should expect repayability if you're the direct recipient of our money. But if you're not for profit as the direct recipient, it's non-repayable. So if you have any more questions or any further, I didn't want to drill too much down into the nitty-gritty of the details in 15 minutes because I have basically 7 stuff to tell you about. There we are, feddevontario.gc.ca. The individual details are on our website. We have a 1-866 number, good partnership with Canada Business Ontario on that one. We can send people out to you. I mean, we're there for you. We're an open door kind of place. And you want brochures? Well, we have an email for that if you want to order some brochures and put them around in your innovation center or just talk about it when you're talking about clients and or colleagues about what your options are. And that's it. No question.
Any immediate questions? We might have time to take 1 or 2 quickies. Here?
Yeah. You said at the beginning that you have a mandate of $1 billion for 5 years.
Right.
So what happens after the 5 years?
Well, I mean, I like to say economic development, you don't successfully pull it off in 5 years or 1 year. So, I mean, the government has the right to relook at and enhance even all of its programming across all of its spectrum, any level of government. We're here to stay. I mean, that's our philosophy. We're here to work to get the Southern Ontario economy rolling again and rolling in different ways. So, what happens after? I'm planning to still be here.
Good morning.
Yes.
You showed that the ARC program is defined as a pilot project.
Yes.
So that to me tells me there may be a second incarnation, another phase.
Right.
Can you give us any information on that?
Yeah, it's a pilot, and as always, pilots get sort of reviewed and revised and to see what worked, what did not, best practice, lessons learned, and there's some sort of decision. At the very minimum, I'll tell you right away, our agency is committing to supporting commercially driven innovation right down to the end of our mandate or until we're told otherwise. So ARC, obviously, we're looking at how we're doing so far, and we're very impressed with a lot of our recipients and how they're delivering. And after that, really, our question is how do we best support innovation in Southern Ontario, commercial innovation in Southern Ontario, and how do we work with PSIs to do that? So we're in it till certainly the mandate of the funding is over, and hopefully some more funding will come in later on. But we're in it till at least 2014. I'm in it till at least 2014. Yeah.
One more?
Yes.
One?
Hi.
My question's very simple. Do you have a booth here, and what is your booth aisle or number?
No, we don't have a booth. No, you just have me, and
Just follow them around.
So I usually make a mad dash. First person to tackle me, rugby tackle only, please. They get the first question. Oh, they get 10 minutes, and then everyone else gets 2. Yeah.
Thanks, sir.
All right, well, thank you very much. It's good to see you again in the hockey arena there. I'm just going to go to the back. If you have any more questions, just tap me, and we'll be happy to talk. Thank you.
Oh, you go first, and then I'll rugby tackle.
Okay, can you move them to the back? Move them to the back and move the... It's funny, so again, welcome to the quick presentations. This always happens after each one. There's a little filter in, a little filter out. So we'll let people leave, and we'll let some others come in for the next presentation. And so come on forward, and those in the back, and lots of seats up here. And we're going to keep moving through. So while you're settling in, I'll do an introduction. So you're in the quick presentations with the OC Innovation Partners, and our next presenter is goes back right to the beginning of OCA, was one of our first partners and has remained very strong partner, and that's the IRAP program, which is Canada's one of Canada's premier innovation programs, has been for a long time. And actually, you know, I always deviate from these introductions, but it's actually been recognized around the globe as a best practice, as a standard, and it's been copied by several jurisdictions over the decades. In reality, so we're pleased to have here today. Now I got to get Tom Matulis, and Tom is the has the privilege of being the acting, I guess, regional director for Ontario for IRAP, and Tom has 25 years of experience in all sorts of things, from product development, sales, marketing, healthcare, energy, water treatment. He's held positions in industry with big companies, small companies, and is an example of IRAP, because IRAP goes much deeper than just funding agencies. The technology advisors all have sophisticated profiles and add a lot of value to clients' companies. And we're pleased to have Tom today. I'll let him take you through the presentation. Same format. He'll be a 10-minute presentation. We'll have some 5 minutes or so for questions, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Bob, for that kind introduction. Also, I'd like to thank OC for inviting me to speak to you here today. And if I could take the opportunity to compliment OC on a great event. I think it's too easy sometimes to underestimate the importance of events like this in the environment that we all operate in. So IRAP has been around for a long time. We're kind of the polar opposite to what you heard with respect to FedDev. And as such, we've worked with arguably tens of thousands of companies. So we're not necessarily a household name, but we're quite well known. Having said that, though, the plan I have for this morning is to provide a brief refresh on our program, offer some comments on how we're working with clients currently, and as well as some developments in the program that will be of interest. So I guess I pushed the green button, right? Great, okay. So at the core of our activities, we seek out companies that present a combination of potential and capacity to grow through technological innovation. So when we see a company that has that capacity, they can also present opportunities based on their technology, know-how, intellectual property, resources, access to markets, positioning in the world. Then we can offer support. That support specifically aims to accelerate the rate of that innovation, as well as the opportunity, or the magnitude, I should say, that innovation will ultimately achieve. When we talk about growth, we're talking about growth in revenues and particularly growth in employment, so high quality employment for Canadians. As well, we address the issue of innovation and innovative capacity in the economy. So, for example, it's not unusual for us to work with companies, small companies, that don't necessarily have a particularly sophisticated approach to innovation. Perhaps they're not necessarily undertaking R&D in a formal way. So we work with companies such as that. We identify their potential, we build their capacity, we help them build their capacity, and then we're able to support them with projects that then hopefully improve their prospects moving forward. So just a brief overview on our program. We're a federal program, and we're mandated to work with small and medium-sized enterprises, so-called SMEs. We define eligible companies as having fewer than 500 employees, incorporated in Canada, for profit. And most of you may know that pretty well encompasses 98% of all companies in Canada. So very broad reach. We trace our history back to the 1940s. So we're a bit of a polar opposite to the story that Taras described to you, FedDev being a much newer source of support for Canadian industry. Back then, the initiative was to tie or to link Canadian industry to the R&D that was being undertaken at NRC. In the 50s and 60s, NRC was probably the single greatest practitioner of R&D in Canada at the time. So we're still managed within NRC, so we have access to resources, a large staff of technical and scientific resources, institutes with machinery, tools, instruments, and so on. But I should add that that doesn't encumber us. We're not tied to utilizing NRC resources. And I'd say that a minority of projects that we are involved with necessarily have substantial NRC content. And I think it was in the 70s or 80s we were chartered to deliver financial support through contributions to companies that undertook work and projects that matched with the mandates that we're targeting. So what do we offer at a high level, and I'll expand on these in a minute. Depending on the capacity, the stage of development of a company, the dynamics in their industry, what their needs are, we can often respond with what we call advisory services. So in a nutshell, we try to bring resources to the table that address roadblocks, encumbrances, barriers to companies advancing their innovation strategies. In my opinion, innovation to a great degree is a numbers game. So we mandate our ITAs to our advisors to link their clients, network their clients into whatever resources can help them overcome some of their problems. And I think, as I say, it's a numbers game. So the more people are exposed to ideas, expertise, potential partners, investors, the more likely innovative activities are able to take root and flourish. And lastly, as I mentioned, we have the opportunity to support work on behalf of clients, primarily focusing on internal costs or labor costs for undertaking R&D related work. And I'll expand on these in a moment. So who are our clients? Our clients come from across Canada, every corner of the country. They come from every imaginable industry where technology can be applied to gain advantage. I think it's important to note in the last 2 years we've benefited from considerable increments to our budget, on one hand through the Economic Action Plan that was administered by the federal government, as well as in Southern Ontario we received a considerable increment to our budget through FedDev. So these numbers are very similar for the last 2 years. These happen to be the numbers for the previous fiscal year. As you may know, our fiscal year ended in March. Unfortunately, our funding levels have migrated back to historical levels, so this year I would expect that our reach will be somewhat more modest than what might be indicated here, but we're always hopeful for supplemental funding. I want to just draw your attention to the distribution of clients and their relatively small size. So the vast majority of companies we work with are quite small, less than 50 employees. So you can imagine the needs that smaller companies have. They do well to manage their day-to-day work, and advancing their strategic their innovation strategy is always a challenge for them. So this provides more of a visual representation of how we interface with our clients. So the major theme is that we work with clients individually, we identify what their barriers to success may be, and we try to bring resources to bear on some of the elements that may be identified as particular priorities. In some cases, particularly with smaller companies, some of these areas are relatively awkward. They're not areas that they have a particular skill base or expertise. We try to facilitate getting them the requirements they may have, or responding to the requirements they may have. In a fair number of cases, we in fact are helping companies develop what might be either an initial or a very much refreshed innovation strategy. And that speaks to the theme of developing innovative capacity within the Canadian economy. So at the core of our program are our advisors, the industrial technology advisors that we deploy across the country. They present typically with extensive academic credentials, 10, often 20 and 30 years of experience from various backgrounds. Some have run companies, run divisions for larger companies, have experience across different industries. Furthermore, they're distributed across the country, so something like 100 or more communities. So most of our ITAs reside in the community that they serve, the exception being some remote areas where we can't, unfortunately, justify a dedicated resource. Every postal code in Canada is the responsibility of an ITA, and If there's one thing you remember from what I have to say today, and that is that if you're contemplating contacting IRAP, then you'll be dealing with an advisor who can work with you on a one-on-one basis and provide guidance as far as what IRAP can or cannot do, what we're able to do as far as timing and so on. So IRAP is a bit unique in the sense that not only does it employ and deploy a field staff, we're also a national program. So we have, as I mentioned, offices in something like 100 communities across the country. We aim to deliver the program very consistently across the country, but because of this local presence, we can often adapt our offering to meet what are sometimes fairly important or very important local needs. And we can do that in a responsive fashion. So if there is a requirement, an ITA may be able to identify it, and because of our structure, we're able to address it, whether positively or negatively, quite quickly. So we can provide that feedback relatively quickly. So as far as funding, clearly companies come to us with the intent to gain support for the projects that they're considering. So historically, we've funded the labor portion of projects that target to develop innovative products and services. By charter, we can support up to $1 million per company per year. That's based on a cost-shared basis. And we know from history, we're typically funding between 35 and 50% of the total cost of an R&D project, for example. So we're not able to support material costs, capital costs, and some of the other expenses that are typical of R&D. So I think it's fair to say that, or more representative to say that on average we're contributing about $110,000 to the projects that we are able to support. So that represents what is an ongoing and historical activity for IRAP. In 2009, based on client feedback and arguably perhaps overdue, we identified that there was a subset of smaller projects that addressed very strategic requirements that contributed to companies advancing their innovation agenda. So we defined or developed a streamlined process to assess smaller projects that typically will be less complex, of lower risk, easier to understand, and we developed a system so that we could allow our clients to propose those projects in a much simpler fashion and to accelerate how we were able to reply to those projects and hopefully in many cases offer approvals. So currently we are offering what we call ARPs, Accelerated Review Projects. They are capped at $50,000 per project. They again are based on a shared cost model, and they're typically dealing with business and market-oriented requirements. So whether it's feasibility, prototyping, market access type questions. And the uptake has been quite substantial, and we feel that we've made a real difference in some cases, again advancing the innovative activities of many companies. We also receive funding through Human Resources Canada to fund the employment of young, typically technically trained graduates. So ideally we're working with our client firms to identify opportunities they have that will provide new graduates with good opportunities to gain experience and ideally a long-term prospect for employment. And finally, we do have a small budget and we contribute to enabling organizations. If you're familiar with the RIC system, the One System in Ontario, we support certain activities from those organizations, as well as industry associations that may offer specialized services to different industries, the Association of Automotive Parts Manufacturers, for example. And we essentially are funding them to deliver services to our target market, so to speak. So they are delivering services based on support that we're able to provide. So where do we go from here? In the last 2 years, we've seen a considerable increase in the demand for our services and support. Larger companies are coming to us than we may have experienced previously because they're finding it more difficult to fund and develop some of their requirements for innovation. Our funding levels vary year to year. So as I mentioned, in the last 2 years, we were funded to a great degree, and this year we're dealing with a smaller budget. And typically, regardless of our funding level, demand will exceed availability. So what I usually advise firms that we deal with to engage their ITAs, perhaps make a decision to incorporate quarterly, semi-annual discussions with one of our advisors on what your plans are, so that you understand better how we can fit in, what the most efficient approach may be, and potentially get the best support that we can possibly offer. So I'll just make a quick note as far as how you can contact us most effectively. There's a 1-800 number. You'll be connected with an ITA, and that ITA can go through the preliminary stages of what your needs may be and guide you as far as what should proceed thereon or thereafter. So that is what I'd like to share with you today. I'm more than happy to answer a few questions, or I'll be around for most of the day.
Maybe I missed it, but what are the average timelines to turn around a project once we reach out to you and lay out the scope?
Yeah. For accelerated projects, in other words, the streamlined process that I described, I'd say we've turned around projects in a matter of a week or two. So in that case, it probably takes longer for the client to put together the project, make sure that the project meets certain requirements we have. But certainly approvals-wise, it could very well be a week. For large projects, that could very well take several months. It will depend, it's project by project though.
Did I understand you to say that not-for-profits could be applicants?
We have a separate budget for funding the delivery of services to our client base. So we essentially purchase services from qualified organizations that are often nonprofits. So we don't fund work by nonprofits for their own purposes.
But if you're doing a project at a not-for-profit that involves the small to mid-sized enterprises, can we apply?
Absolutely. So if you have a skill set, a resource, a local role to play, then you can certainly propose to deliver services to SMEs. But we're looking for the delivery of services.
Specifically for a marketing strategy or a competitive plan of some sort, those programs that we would normally fund small and medium-sized enterprises, would a not-for-profit
No. No, we essentially we're buying services from organizations to deliver to a constituency, our target market. So we're typically funding educational programs, outreach, various services that we can't necessarily offer on a regional or industry basis. We're not funding nonprofits to develop their capabilities and develop what it is their mandate is. Yeah, we can talk later if you like, sure.
Would you work with SME companies in the manufacturing space on process improvement, or is it really just about product?
Yeah, what we look for is the business case. So particularly when it comes to smaller projects, ARP so-called, we'll look at anything that will advance the fortunes of that company. And if we see that they're able to access increased markets, they're able to grow their business by reducing their cost basis, then we certainly will look at that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great, thanks.
Okay, we're going to move it right along. We'll let the same thing happen. The trail will come in, and the new trail will come in from people. Come on in. There's seats up front. And I'll start the intros while people are filtering in and filtering out, and we'll keep the series going. So welcome to those who are just joining us. You're into our series of presentations on innovation partners. And people are welcome to come in and come out. And we will, the format that we're using is 10-minute presentations and then about 5 minutes for Q&A afterwards. And the speakers are staying around at the back. So it's been a really good format, and I think people are enjoying it very much. So next up is a speaker from ISTP Canada, or the International Science Technology Partnerships. Just so happens I know this guy, so I have a bio here, but I'll say a few other things just to, you know, give you the introduction that you deserve. Actually, it's interesting. ISTP, it's not. This isn't in here, so I'll make this up. ISTP is an interesting thing because ISTP is kind of a, from my perception, was a thought ahead of its time. It's actually more in vogue now than when it was originally set up, which is, I don't know if you'll share that thought with me, Bharat, but and so I think it's very timely that we have Bharat here to speak to it. In particular, the fact that Bharat is responsible for two of the hottest jurisdictions going internationally, Brazil and India. And there's nobody I can talk to out there in the world of business that isn't interested. I keep hearing India and I keep hearing Brazil. It's amazing. And the ISTP, though set up scientifically, is really conscious of blending that science with business. I made that up too, Bharat, so you can tell me whether I'm right on or right off anyway. So anyway, let me introduce Bharat Rudra. He's the country manager for ISTP Canada for India and Brazil. He has multi-years of experience in collaborative research, development, business management, and software development in his own entrepreneurial enterprises. And in addition for this responsibility, and prior to joining ISTP Canada, we had the privilege of having Bharat Rudra as one of OCE's business development managers. So, and we lent him over to ISTP on a partnership deal, and they liked him so much they kept him. So to our loss and their gain, and please welcome Bharat Rudra. Bharat.
Thank you, Bob, for that great introduction. And yes, until recently, I was at OCE. So in fact, most of my experience is lent to OCE. I learned all the hooks from here in tech transfer and commercialization. So I'm not gonna take too much time. I'll definitely be able to finish in 10 minutes. My aim in 10 minutes is to give you an overview of ISTP Canada's R&D and partnership development program, where we provide funding to Canadian companies working in collaboration with the partner countries. So ISTP Canada, which stands for International Science and Technology Partnerships Canada, is an arm's length organization funded by the Government of Canada through Department of Foreign Affairs, and it was mandated to develop and implement R&D collaboration programs under the S&T collaboration agreements that Government of Canada has signed with India, China, Brazil, and Israel. Just to let you know that under the umbrella of ISTP Canada, we're managing 3 programs, which is India, China, and Brazil. And CERDIF is managed by our sister organization, which for all practical purposes, you can think of it as the same organization. But it is managed by an organization called CERDIF, which is Canada-Israel Industrial Research and Development Foundation. Of course, all the good stuff, why we do it, to enhance Canada's competitiveness and of course, benefits to both countries and so on. Here's a little bit about the results, what we have done so far. ISTP Canada was started in March 2007, so we are almost a bit over 4 years old now, and there's some of the results that what we have done so far. But I'm going to get more towards into the program. So ISTP Canada provides the Canadian government's funding to 4:1, minimum 4:1 leverage dollars. More importantly, is the vehicle that is set up by Government of Canada and provincial governments to do international collaboration, industrial R&D collaborations. We work with, besides DFIT, who's our major funding partner, we work with British Columbia government, Alberta, Ontario. Some of these numbers are not correct because they're not taken into account the Israel component of it. So some of these numbers are doubled of that. So besides that, of course, we work with our close partner, Ontario Centres of Excellence. We have funded programs together, and Western Economic Development, and with IRAP. And recently we have signed an agreement with NSER to work together with them as well in making sure that we're leveraging public funds and helping companies and academics to build relationship with partner countries. So what do? We will provide Canadian companies. When it says companies, mostly could be thought of it as SMEs, and their eligible domestic collaborators with the funding support. So this support is for collaborative R&D projects. I will give you an example of one of the projects shortly. So these are early stage partnership activities as well. These are the activities, the strategic activities normally undertaken by experts and researchers in a specific area. So these are the two main things that we do. Our flagship program is collaborative R&D project. That's where most of our funds go. We also provide an industry matchmaking service on an ad hoc basis as companies are looking for partners to build relationships so they can leverage our programs. The eligible applicants for our programs, companies are mandatory. This is for R&D program, and we do encourage the participation of academia because innovation is a major and a prime component of any of the projects that we fund. So we're adopting a truly bilateral approach to our program delivery when we work with our partner countries. What does that mean? That the call for proposals, the decision making, and even going through the process of evaluation, and so it's all done collaboratively. We will have a single application, expression of interest or full application. The evaluation processes would be separate, but the decision making will again has to be done jointly, and it has to be unanimous decision. A little bit more details into the collaborative R&D projects. There's minimum has to be one company engaged from Canada and from the partner country. Participation of academia, as I said earlier, is highly encouraged. Two projects that look identical and one has a participation of academia will have a better chances of success. And young participation of or exchange of young researchers is also encouraged under this program. What do we look for in any project? We look for a scientific merit and a degree of innovation. We're not looking for projects that just you're looking for a partner in a country where you could do a cheaper work or so on. This is a truly innovative projects. It's okay to be risky as long as they lead to innovation. Of course, all the projects that we fund, they have to lead to a market or business opportunity, and there has to be potential for commercialization. This is looked up front. Obviously, things change as the project go by. It must if it is a good project and a good if it is addressing the right need. And we do look for the capacity of the participants to manage the projects, and of course to manage the commercialization further down the road. We can put up to a maximum of $600,000 in the Canadian part of the project, which is only 50% of the Canadian cost. That means if we're putting a $600,000 in Canada, that means Canadian partners have to put $600,000, and the equivalence of effort will be done by the partner country. That means with our funding of $600,000, we can fund a project that is minimum $2.4 million. It could be more than that if other partners are putting more money than that. We do look for as I said, an effort. I just want to explain the equivalent term here. It means that if we're working, let's say, with India or China, same dollar can stretch a lot farther. So we will not be looking for a $1.2 million from Canadian side or Indian side or from Chinese side, because if that happens, the project will be 4 times bigger in China and the benefits will go to China. So we're looking for equal benefits and equal participation on both sides. Quick on a application review process. Normally we start with expression of interest, and expression of interest are looked at specifically for the criteria. We do not look too much into the innovation and other components, but we want to make sure that all the components are in place before you go to full application, because it's a very time-consuming process. We want to make sure that you have been headed in the right direction. So, as I said earlier, that proposal evaluations, it happens independently in both countries, but the decision is unanimous. On the Canadian side, it finally goes through advisory committee, and the final approval comes from our board of directors. A little bit about our partnership development activities. These are the focused and strategic activities which can be undertaken by researchers, by experts in a specific area, say a nanotechnology, but even in a specific and in a nano materials, per se, where it leverages the strengths of both sides and look for a new modes of collaboration, new modes of funding. We are the enabler in this, and we're expecting that proponents coming to us will look into the opportunities to develop into bigger programs. So what do we look out of it? Obviously the number one thing that comes out of it is that a visionary R&D projects that will provide a pipe to our program. We look for new R&D funding collaboration mechanism where partners have engaged. They're looking for a new center of excellence. They're looking for new consortia that would lead to better results down the line. Again, in the partnership development activities, we provide 50% of the funding, of maximum of $25,000. We do encourage even partners from other countries and organizations, but our funding will only go to Canadian participants. Just a bit on industry matchmaking. As I said, it's an ad hoc program. We do provide help companies to find partners in the partner countries so that they work on joint programs. We will be releasing a call for proposal under our Ontario India Fund, which will be released in next 2 to 3 weeks in biotechnology, which covers all aspects of biotechnology, in particular health technologies, medical devices, and others as well. And that I'm 1 minute ahead of time. I'm open for questions. Bob, you must like me.
Nope.
Just a question. The partner company in India, for example, a company has a division in US and another in Canada and another division in India. Do you support this kind of collaboration, or the company in India should be India-based?
Good question. Actually, it's also a complicated question as well. From the Canadian side, we do not distinguish between a Canadian company as being headquartered in Canada or headquartered in US and Brussels. What we do look for is that actually Canadians are getting a good benefit out of that company. For example, IBM could be a good partner. They have 10,000 employees in Canada, so they're a good partner for us. But in India, just because they're new to innovation game and they're very new to funding companies, they're very cautious that they're funding Indian companies, and for the right reasons. They want to develop the R&D capacity for the companies in India. So they're looking for when they say Indian company, for example, it means that they have to have 50% ownership in India. But for China and for others, the rules are pretty well same, but they change from country to country. Thanks.
Hello. It's about post-secondary institutions. You mentioned that post-secondary institutions could be involved, but there has to be a Canadian company.
Yeah.
Now, do you care about who is the primary applicant? Does it have to be the company, or can it be the post-secondary institution?
Again, a good question. At this point, we're just coming up to the end of our first round of funding. In that round of funding, no, we don't care who the primary applicant is. In fact, 50% of the time, it's a company, another 50%. And when it's a company, it's normally company to company. There's no academics. When academics are involved, most of the time, it's academics who are the lead. So with the new funds, we might have some little bit change in the rules, but at this point, it's open to both, as long as the rest of the components are in place. One difference between us and some of the other programs is that we're not just looking for a participation of the company. Company has to be an integral part of the project because our funding is auditable. Actually, we do audit our projects. Any other question?
Okay, thanks very much.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank
Brad.
you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Brad, again. Actually, at this point, I am going to introduce somebody who's going to introduce the speaker. How about that? So what I'm going to do is switch over hosting to my colleague. I'd like to introduce Craig Laudrum from OCE's. He's the director of our program delivery. Anybody that has any kind of program at OCE, if Craig works behind the scenes to make sure that everything goes according to plan. So nothing happens unless it goes through Craig's hands at some point, or eyes, or whatever. So, and here he is from behind the scenes into the forefront. So Craig, please welcome Craig to the podium. He'll take over hosting, and thank you.
Thanks, Bob. And to move things along, I'm going to introduce Zoltan Tompa. As Regional Director of Partnerships in Toronto, Zoltan Tompa acts as the focal point for identifying, developing, and nurturing relationships with the financial sector, SMEs and industry, as well as provincial governments, academia, and non-governmental stakeholders within the region. Prior to taking on this position, Zoltan spent over 5 years as Director, Applications at SDTC. As such, he interacted closely with sustainable development technology developers throughout Canada, helping them understand the SDTC application process and providing feedback and guidance on how to articulate their value propositions in clear and compelling ways. If you have any questions, there should be an opportunity to ask at the end of the presentation.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for the introduction, Craig. My name is Zoltan Tompa, Director. Actually, it just rolls off the tongue. I just changed positions in the past 2 weeks or so. So formerly Director Applications, now Regional Director for Partnerships here in Ontario. And I presume just the green button to advance? Just this? Yeah. So just to introduce, actually I'll just check right off the bat, how many people are familiar with Sustainable Development Technology Canada? So about 50% or so. Okay, well hopefully we'll change that by the end of the presentation. Sustainable Development Technology Canada, SDTC, is a federally backed clean technology fund. We were set up back in 2001 as a policy instrument of the federal government in order to help advance and support late-stage technology development and pre-commercial demonstration. The focus of the fund is on, as implied by clean technology, technologies that deliver certain environmental benefits. So technologies that deliver benefits related to greenhouse gas reduction, reduction of criteria air contaminants, or help improve the quality of soil and water. Part of the SDTC process is not just around funding companies. We actually fund projects as opposed to just companies, and we fund these technology development and demonstration projects. And a key component of those projects is a consortium. So what we're looking for is a company that's perhaps developing or looking to market an innovative technology, clean technology, comes to us partnering with some of the critical supply chain partners. It could be kind of downstream partners, channel partners, systems integrators, but most fundamentally and most importantly would be an end user, a representative end user of their end market. The purpose of the fund, of course, is not just to fund the technology, but to put all these ingredients into place so that technology advances fairly quickly into the marketplace. So we actually operate two funds. So the first fund, the SD Tech Fund, which is a $550 million fund, that was the first fund that that SDTC was set up to administer. It actually originated as a $150 million fund and then grew to a $350 million fund and then ultimately a $550 million fund with the most recent capitalization being in 2005. We've now allocated about $515 million of that $550 million to about 210 projects. And we are in the process of looking to have that recapitalized. We actually did receive an additional $40 million as kind of a bridge over the next couple of years in the last federal budget. We all know where the last federal budget ended up, and hopefully the same one will come back and support SDTC again. We were very, very grateful for that. More recently, we also received received the mandate to support the Next Generation Biofuels Fund. So this is a $500 million fund, and the purpose of this fund is to support first-of-kind, large-scale or near-commercial-scale biofuel production facilities that use next-generation feedstocks. So this would be non-food feedstocks, typically waste feedstocks. So very different from the SD Tech Fund, and actually the next couple slides will kind of position where these two funds sit relative to each other. So the purpose of this slide here is just to demonstrate in relative terms the amount of funding that's available through different mechanisms to be able to support technology and development. So this is a very linear, somewhat simplified view of the innovation chain, starting with fundamental research, applied research, moving through to technology development and demonstration, product commercialization, market entry, and then ultimately, yes, market entry and market volume. Of course, very rarely does technology work in that way and actually march through a clean and neat and linear path like that. But the thickness of the blue lines basically illustrates the relative amount of funding for those different phases. So you can see that government is very active at the fundamental research stage. Industry becomes progressively more active and invests more at an applied research stage when there's a line of sight to the market. But where things really drop off quite dramatically is in the technology development and demonstration phase. And this is even more acute for for clean technology, which is very capital intensive. The gestation periods to be able to develop out and scale up and prove out these technologies can be very protracted. And so that lack of funding has typically inhibited a number of technologies from getting to market. And then further downstream from that, that's where you see venture capital in industry, and then much, much later on, banks through debt finance and project finance and mechanisms such as that. There's also a high capex gap, and this is what addresses the purpose of the Next Gen Biofuels Fund is to address this high capex gap. That would be a special class of clean technology, which would be very large scale process equipment, like a biofuel production process. It could also be a very large-scale industrial process, which may require, in some cases, tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars to deploy it at commercial scale. So our two funds basically flank those two gaps. The Next Generation Biofuels Fund, again, is just limited to to biofuel production facilities, but that gap continues to exist for other areas such as industrial, large capex industrial plays, and the SD Tech Fund sits just upstream from that. And typically you would see things like IRAP. I'm not sure if IRAP was already presented to you. IRAP you would normally see a little bit before SDTC. So we very often see a deal flow coming from IRAP. So technology that is perhaps IRAP will take from a proof of concept to a prototype. And then we can work off a fairly advanced or mature prototype where there's no longer any question as to whether or not the technology will work. And now the next step is much more capital intensive, and the SD Tech Fund can help deploy some capital against that in conjunction with some private sector capital and potentially levered against other government funding. This just gives you a sense of the breakdown of the mix of investments that SDTC has. So by and large, you look at the first three categories: energy exploration, power generation, energy utilization. Energy in general forms probably the majority of the investments that we've made. But this is also, you'll notice that waste management, if it's producing power, will actually show up under power generation. So this is not always entirely telling. We do have a significant amount in agriculture and forestry and waste management. So as I touched upon at the beginning of the presentation, we've now allocated about $515 million of the $550 million fund. And there's a lever aspect to it. So as a company, a startup, or as an SME applies to SDTC, we will typically support about a third of the total eligible project costs to scale up and deploy that technology with real partners, with a real end user. The other 2/3 can be made up of, in some cases, of some other complementary government funding programs, but more often than not, it's a private investment. And you can lever unconventional investments, so in-kind contributions, as an example, from project partners and strategic partners. And the attractive thing about that is that kind of investment very often is non-dilutive, SDTC's investment is also non-dilutive. It is non-repayable. So it is very attractive for a startup or an SME, in particular a startup, because it allows them to defer potential fundraising activity with the private sector and prevent, or in some cases even avoid or bypass the need for equity dilution at all. And from an SME perspective, it allows an SME to be able to calve off a higher risk project that they may not be able to undertake financially on their own because they're capital constrained, and work with other partners to make the finances whole for that. So because of that levered requirement, it takes a $15 million fund allocation so far up to $1.8 billion of total project expense. Just to position SDTC relative to some other clean technology funds, we do have a little bit of a gem here in Canada, and we hear that increasingly from the international community, where we have other countries that are looking to model funds around SDTC. It is a very large fund in terms of dollars, and it's also a very large fund in terms of number of companies that we've invested in. The y-axis here illustrates how many companies we've invested in, and the x-axis and the size of the circle represents the number of dollars. So we do rank up there with some very large, very well-known venture capital funds. There was a study that was done recently that shows that SDTC-funded companies actually have about 4 times the annual compound annual growth rate to companies, clean technology companies that SDTC did not fund. So there is something that is working right in the formula. We've formulated a couple programs. So this is actually another value add that we do with our portfolio companies. So once a company is actually approved for financing and the project is unfolding hopefully successfully, as those projects are nearing completion or have completed, we will work with our portfolio companies to help make introductions to follow-on investors. So that could be venture capital, it could be private equity for larger capital needs, it could be to the project finance community in some cases, or strategic partners who have investment arms where they can deploy capital into strategic plays. And this graph basically shows the amount of follow-on investment that has followed SDTC investments. So in 2010, $418 million of private capital followed SDTC's investments. 2009, there was a pretty heavy blip, and I think everybody recalls it was a pretty brutal market for fundraising at that time. But that notwithstanding that drop, it is a positive upward trend. There's about 62% so far of venture capital activity basically chases or follows SDTC investments. So we are a critical source of deal flow for the venture capital community, and they do rely on us very heavily. This slide also demonstrates that we're also seeing an increasing amount of international investment coming into SDTC portfolio companies following our investment. And we do have an international outreach program where we are working with international funds, in some cases some sovereign wealth funds of some countries as well, in order to get that capital mobilized into Canadian technology. So there's a lot of value that's being added well beyond the initial dollars and capacity support building that SDTC is providing. Another program that we've formalized recently is something called technology adoption. It's similar to the follow-on funding program, again, for companies that are already in the portfolio and at or near completion. And we will make introductions to large multinationals or large corporates who have, I'll just jump ahead here too, who have specific technology needs in terms of licensing, potentially from a merger or acquisition point of view as well. So we have engaged in, I think, well over 40 multinational enterprises so far in introducing SDTC companies. So we do a lot of segmentation of our portfolio and make sure that we're introducing them to the right partners and the right investors at the right stage. So I'm about 10 seconds away from finishing up here. So I'll wrap it up at that, and I'll be happy to entertain any questions.
Do you have a list of companies that you funded through the Next Gen project?
We have companies that are currently in due diligence for the Next Generation Biofuels Fund, but they aren't announced yet. So that's a very different one. We have a lot of deal flow on the SD Tech Fund, The Next Generation Biofuels Fund, they're literally probably 10 or less companies. There are quite a few more companies, but they are just reaching a point now where they would be ready for that near commercial scale deployment. Yeah.
Any other questions?
No. Okay.
Well, obviously it was a very thorough presentation, and Zoltan, thank you very much for making yourself available here today.
Great. Thank you for the invite.
The next speaker is going to be Rebecca Bork, who is with the MITACS program. It's Mathematics of Information Technology and Complex Systems. Like many of you, I use the acronyms more often than the real thing, so that's good for me to remind me. MITACS, as you likely know them, is pretty well known under the acronym. Roxy Hamilton is also here with Rebecca, and Roxy's been working closely with Rebecca from the OCE side to look at ways where we can help to facilitate this program. As Business Development Director at MITACS, Rebecca's role is to connect industry partners with academic researchers to help fuel Canada's knowledge economy. She supports all of the programs that MITACS has to offer, including Accelerate, Elevate, Global Link, STEP, and Outreach. While at MITACS, she's been able to facilitate and help fund many business research projects with companies such as Xerox Automation, Research in Motion, Christie Digital, MapleSoft, to name a few. Roxy Hamilton has been with OC since 2008. Roxy's specialty is in our talent development programs, including the Value Added Personnel Program, or VAP as we refer to it, the First Job Program, and has recently been working closely with MITACS to help deliver some aspects of that program, particularly the MITACS Accelerate internships. Roxy previously served as a member of the Board of Directors of the Science and Technology Awareness Network and the Ottawa Talent Initiative. So with 35 years experience working in the Ottawa high-tech industry, she has worked in various roles in communications, administration, in small and medium-sized companies as well as startups. So please welcome Rebecca Bork and Roxy Hamilton. So do you want to...
Thank you everyone for coming. I'm going to start with a brief overview of what MITACS is. I'd like you to forget that you know that the acronym stands for the Mathematics of Information Technology and Complex Systems, because we have been an NCE over the past 2 rounds, and we've been able to spin off the math piece, the NCE piece, and we're launching, or we have launched, as a company, a not-for-profit company, dealing in innovation. So we still have our all disciplines programs, and we are separate from our NCE now, although we still support both of them. So we work in the knowledge-based economy, and what we do is we help attract, train, I think it's on here. Retrain and deploy highly qualified personnel. So through our programs, the attraction piece comes from Global Link, where we have brought over students from the India Institute of Technology, and we're working with some other governments in order to bring other highly qualified personnel over. And we sponsor them between their 3rd and 4th years in the university setting. We set them up with a researcher and try to show them how great our company or our country is, and they try to entice them to come back for grad school. So once we have graduates here, we have a couple of programs for them. That's Accelerate and Elevate. Now, Elevate is specifically for postdocs, and Accelerate is open to graduates at the master's, PhD, and postdoc level. Our STEP program is a skills enhancement program because our Accelerate partners have told us that it's really great that you're helping these students get involved with industry. Can you please help them with such other skills as project management, communication, sometimes some etiquette in terms of email and communication, and presentation skills. So that's what our STEP program helps with. Outreach is our K-12 program that we bring into the high schools and the middle schools. Right now it's focused in math, but we're broadening that to science as well. So I'm going to spend most of the time here on Accelerate because I think it's most pertinent to this conference and to this audience. So Accelerate is a program that we run across the country, and what we do is help facilitate and fund research collaborations between industry and academia. The nuts and bolts of the program are up there. So what happens is a company supplies $7,500 per 4-month internship. They send that to MITACS. MITACS matches that and sends $15,000 to the university's, to the supervisor's research account. Of that $15,000, $10,000 goes to the student as stipend, and $5,000 can be used for research costs. And those research costs include things like travel to a conference to be able to present your findings. Expendables, we follow the NSERC guidelines for that, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with the NSERC guidelines. The students in this program spend half of their time at the industry and half of their time back in academia. So what generally happens is the industry partner defines their problem, their issue, their research need, and we can help you find that kind of research in the universities and connect you with a professor and a graduate student. So the student gets involved, they get skills, they get a network, they see what it's like to be in industry, get outside of academia for a little while, and bring their skills with them, but they can also come back and help solve the problem at the university. So they have the resources of their lab that they're working in, they've got their supervisor to help them, they've got their colleagues, they've got equipment resources at the university, so it's really a win-win situation for the student and for the company. So master's students are able to do 2 internships. They're in 4-month blocks. PhDs are able to do 4, and postdocs can do 4 per lifetime. The application process is very short, so we do encourage the students to take a stab at writing them because part of their training is to figure out how to write grant proposals. So our BDs will help you with that proposal. You can send it to us and we'll give you some help through that process and give you some pointers. There are no application deadlines, so whatever works for the industry, for the student, the supervisor, we help mediate that process. And it's about a 6-week turnaround from the time of submission to getting an answer. It's not a competitive program, so if you meet the peer review and you meet the criteria, then the projects are approved. Foreign students are welcome. The student remains a student at the university, so companies don't have to think about things like EI, CPP, any of the paperwork that you would have to do to bring on an employee. We can do larger projects as well. We call them clusters. So if a company has at least 3 students that they are able to support and they can supply $36,000, MITACS can match that with $44,000 for an $80,000 research grant. And in that comes 6 internships, and you can bundle them any way you want among the 3 students. You can have more than 3 students. You have to have at least 3. And you can use the $20,000 for research costs, the same as you can with Accelerate. So we've had exponential growth with Accelerate. We started off with 17 math internships in BC. And as you can see, from 2003 to 2011, we've had tremendous growth with this program. Some of the industry partners we've worked with are up here. And if you have any questions or any comments, I'd be happy to take them now. If you want to approach me after, that's fine too. We have a booth over here at 203, and there's my contact information.
So are there any questions?
Yes, we are. We have a number of different funders. So we have federal and provincial funding. So this program is a standalone. When you get funding for Accelerate, you can't match those industry funds with federal or provincial money. You're welcome.
Hi, I get requests from the universities, and as you know that in the university there are students from different countries that are on student visa and they don't have work permits and so on. So, but you're saying that they don't require work permit or anything else.
True.
As an industry supporter of those projects, I shouldn't be concerned that they'll be working because industries are funding those projects, so many of those projects.
Yes.
So, but they take that money and they leverage that with MITACS funding.
Yes.
So, but for industry, I think we need to make sure that whoever is working with the funding that's provided by the industry has appropriate work permit within the country. So
right. They're not really working for you. They don't become an employee of your company. The research project is given to them, or you're collaborating on the research project, and they're working to help solve your opportunity.
Testing. I guess when you look at MITACS, you'll notice that OCE and MITACS communities are very similar in that we would deal with graduate students and support graduate students in research in Ontario. But what I wanted to tell you was that we support the Accelerate program in any way that we can, and you are certainly welcome to talk to any of the OCE business development staff on the floor here today.
And we collaborate on our on the VAP program as well, or we work to train students together as well.
Questions? I'd like to thank Rebecca for your time today.
Thank you.
It was a very interesting presentation, and obviously a terrific program that's being well subscribed. So this is the time to get in on it because it's a great opportunity.
Thank you.
Very much. So I'm going to introduce now our next innovation partner presenter for the morning. And he is from Canada's Advanced Research and Innovation Network, also known as CANARIE, because we love acronyms in this industry. And so speaking to you this morning is Harry Sharma. He's a market researcher and analyst with CANARIE. Prior to joining CANARIE, as a market researcher, Harry completed his master's in engineering management and has extensive experience in technology, policy, and research. If you have any questions, there will be an opportunity to have them answered at the end of the presentation. So I'd like to bring Harry Sharma to the podium.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Harry Sharma, and I'm a policy analyst with CANARIE. For those of, and I'm here to dare you to innovate, apparently. I'll tell you more about the dare part, which is the main reason why I'm here. So next slide. Yeah. For those of you who may not be very familiar with CANARIE and what we do, we basically are a separate internet dedicated for research and education in Canada. We connect to over 1,000 institutions, mostly all Canadian universities and colleges, and also to over 140,000 researchers and over 1 million users. So they include university students, university undergraduate and graduate students, PhD students, and K-12 schools as well. Our core mandate is to increase the efficiency of research in Canada. So for example, the government of Canada, the federal government, spends over $3.5 billion through the granting councils and CFI, while we enable a lot of the research through our network, because most of the ICT research takes place over the network. A lot of the new internet protocols are developed using our network. We have our network is about 19,000 kilometers long, and it's 100 gigabits per second on our core corridors, which is, I think, about 1,000 times faster than your normal internet connections that you get at home. We also connect Canadian researchers to international researchers. We have connections to over 100 international peer networks in over 80 countries. Again, because we are a critical part of Canada's digital infrastructure, we believe we have a role to play in stimulating the ICT sector in Canada. Well, as you know, the ICT sector is really important too. Is that better? Okay. Well, as you know, the ICT sector is really important, not only because it adds employment and GDP and contributes to the Canadian GDP. It's also an enabling platform where it enables other sectors and improves their productivity and improves productivity in other sectors as well. So we believe it's really important, and that's why we want to do something about it. Most of us are familiar with the trends in the ICT sector, where the venture capital is at a lowest in 14 years, where IT professionals coming to Canada is down threefold since 2001. Our R&D intensity in the ICT sector is only at 5.4% compared as compared to 7.4% in the U.S. And our share of OECD ICT exports have also gone down to only 1.9% for goods and 4.5% for services. So again, our Canadian ICT sector is in trouble, and we need to do something about it. And that is why CANARIE is happy to announce its new program. It's called the DARE program, Digital Accelerator for Innovation and Research. Basically what it is, it allows our infrastructure, which is a 19,000 kilometer long fiber optic network coast to coast to coast, and you combine that with compute and storage. So you have high performance computing, and then you have massive storage capabilities. You combine all of that together and you provide it to the SMEs in Canada, primarily the ICT SMEs. We're also going to tag on the Wi-Fi component to it and cellular. So if you're an SME in wireless mobile application space right now, well, we want you to come and test your new application, test your new service that you have using our network to validate your product, to have a working prototype. And the best part is, because we are running it in a pilot phase till next year, till March 2012, there is no charge for it. So all SMEs, all Canadian ICT SMEs get to use our infrastructure at no cost. It is cost neutral to them until next year. So why do we launch this? Again, to help out the ICT sector, but also we want to support made in Canada technologies and services. What we hope to accomplish with this is to reduce the time to market for Canadian ICT SMEs. Because, as most of you may know, it is very expensive to set up a new R&D infrastructure if you're an SME. Well, you don't have to do that anymore. You can use our infrastructure to do that. And we also, I think, are targeting the same market and same target that the federal government's digital economy strategy is going to try to aim at. And so we believe we are a part of it. And who will benefit from our DARE program? Can you go back? SMEs during the pilot phase, obviously, because it is cost-free, cost-neutral to them. They can come and use our network, our infrastructure. But once we go into the full phase, ICT researchers at Canadian universities can come and use the DARE program to develop new protocols, to collaborate with industry partners. And also during the full phase, multinational companies would also be able to come and use our network, our infrastructure to develop new prototypes. And also we believe to build ecosystems around their products and services, have SMEs come and join them and validate their products and services. So that's the plan. And so we dare you to innovate. If you have any questions, I'll be pleased to answer them. Thank you.
So thank you, Harry. Any questions for Harry about this tremendous resource?
I hope I'm audible. I did not see any mention about federal companies or research-oriented government entities that you might be able to help.
Well,
is that on the agenda or not?
Absolutely. I forgot to mention, I think I should have. We are funded by the federal government. We've received over $470 million from Industry Canada over the past 17 years. And a lot of the RTOs, the research and technology organizations, are connected to the Canadian network, and they're absolutely welcome to use this program as well. So, yeah.